What happens when fame outlives the body? Some stars fade, some are forgotten, and some refuse to disappear. They're no longer alive yet, we still see them. In magazine covers long after print died, in perfume ads, on fashion runways, in film school, montages. In the minds of artists who weren't even born when their last lines were spoken, these aren't just celebrities, they're echoes, prototypes, cultural ghosts. We keep resurrecting, not out of nostalgia, but necessity, because something about them, a gaze, a gesture, a kind of cinematic truth feels more real than the world we live in now. They weren't perfect. Some of them were difficult, damaged, dangerous, but maybe that's why they lasted, because they weren't playing God. They were playing us louder, brighter, crueler, more beautiful. This is not a tribute. This is an autopsy of myth, a slow excavation of why some stars never truly die and how they continue to shape the way we dream, desire, and define greatness. Their names are familiar. Their faces are legendary. But what they've become is something else entirely. Which of them still lives in you, and which one never really left? Act has sown. Marilyn Monroe, the dream that never woke up. She died in 1962, but somehow she's still everywhere. On t-shirts, museum walls, TikTok filters. Marilyn Monroe isn't just a woman, she's an unresolved question that culture keeps asking over and over again. What made her endure isn't only her beauty or her tragic death, but the contradictions she embodied. Vulnerability masked by glamour, desire entwined with despair. Beneath the platinum curls and breathy voice was a woman aching for seriousness, for control, for dignity. Hollywood gave her everything except what she needed most: protection. And yet, that's precisely why she never disappears. The camera didn't just capture her face, it captured her longing. And that longing still lingers in our imagination, as if Marilyn was the dream we're all still trying to wake up from. If Monroe had lived, would she still be iconic? Or was it her absence that made her eternal? Fact #2. James Dean, the rebellion that froze in time. He made only 3 films. He lived only 24 years. And yet, his shadow stretches longer than most full careers. James Dean wasn't just an actor, he was the face of every misunderstood soul who ever clenched a fist at the world. His leather jacket, his slouch, his wounded gaze, they weren't costumes, they were declarations. Dean wasn't performing rebellion, he was rebellion. He didn't act angry, he bled defiance. When he died in a car crash, it wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a myth. Frozen at the perfect moment, Dean became a cultural relic, impervious to age, untouched by missteps. We never got to see him decline, and that absence created a vacuum filled with legend. Would James Dean have survived success, or was his tragedy his masterpiece? Fact #3. Humphrey Bogart, the tough man with a fractured heart. He wasn't handsome by Hollywood standards. His lisp, his wrinkles, his smoker's rasp, none of it fit the studio mold. And yet, Humphrey Bogart became the prototype of the cinematic man. Hard, weary, moral, in the face of decay. Whether in Casablanca or The Maltese Falcon, Bogart's characters stood at the edge of disillusionment, cigar in hand, love lost, or too dangerous to keep. But it wasn't the toughness that lingered, it was the humanity flickering underneath. You trusted Bogart because you knew he'd been hurt before. Even today, when actors play gritty, they're imitating him. But what they miss is the restraint, the sense that pain is being buried, not broadcast. In a world of loud men, Bogart whispered integrity. Is that why we still hear him? Fact #4. Audrey Hepburn, the elegance that redefined womanhood. She wasn't curvy like Monroe. She didn't smolder like Hayworth. But Audrey Hepburn didn't need to. Her grace was architectural light, precise, impossible to replicate. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, she gave loneliness a smile. In Roman Holiday, she turned vulnerability into royalty. And off-screen, she lived with the kind of quiet dignity most stars pretended to have but rarely embodied. As a UNICEF ambassador, as a war survivor, she reminded the world that beauty without empathy is decoration. Fashion still copies her. Photographers still chase that tilt of her head. Young actresses still name her as their guiding star. But Hepburn was never just a look, she was an ethic. A kind of soft, moral clarity the camera could feel. Can elegance be a form of resistance? Audrey Hepburn made it so. Fact #5. Charlie Chaplin, the laugh that understood sorrow. He never said a word in his most iconic films, yet generations remember what he said. The tramp, with his bowler hat and oversized shoes, made the entire world laugh at poverty, injustice, loneliness. But beneath the slapstick was a philosophy that human dignity could survive even when everything else failed. Chaplin was a global myth in an era before social media. His face was more recognized than world leaders, but it was what he stood for: resilience, compassion, irony that stayed behind the makeup. Even as silent cinema faded, Chaplin didn't vanish. His spirit lived on in the DNA of comedy, from Robin Williams to Pixar. His laugh wasn't cheap. It was a survival mechanism. He made us laugh so we wouldn't cry. And we're still laughing, still remembering. Fact #6. Marlon Brando. The earthquake that changed acting forever. Before Brando, acting was performance. After Brando, it was transformation. With A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, and The Godfather, he didn't just play characters, he became them. He mumbled, he slouched, he refused to play by the old rules. And in doing so, he made the old rules irrelevant. Directors feared him, studios fought him, but audiences couldn't look away. He brought truth to a profession built on illusion. Brando aged, grew erratic, courted controversy, but none of it diluted his impact. Every modern actor from De Niro to DiCaprio owes him a debt. He broke the mold, then refused to be anyone's sculpture. Brando didn't act, he erupted. And the tremors are still being felt. Fact #7. Grace Kelly. The crown Hollywood never deserved. She had the face of a porcelain statue and the composure of a queen long before she ever wore a crown. Grace Kelly wasn't just elegance, she was elevated elegance, detached yet magnetic, like someone born in a dream too refined for real life. In Hitchcock's thrillers, she was both ice and flame. In To Catch a Thief and Rear Window, she balanced danger and dignity with surgical precision. She wasn't the damsel, she was the enigma. Then she left Hollywood at her peak, becoming Princess of Monaco. But the fantasy didn't end, it metastasized. Her life became part of the modern fairy tale mythos, retold in tabloids, fashion runways, royal documentaries. Grace Kelly didn't just marry royalty. She reminded Hollywood it could never truly contain her. Fact #8. Bette Davis, the actress who turned rage into art. She didn't do pretty, she didn't do sweet, she did power. With eyes like daggers and a voice that sliced through pretense, Bette Davis wasn't in the business of being adored, she was in the business of being unforgettable. In All About Eve and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, she burned the idea that actresses must beg for sympathy. Her characters were flawed, venomous, brilliant, and utterly alive. Off-screen, she was no less volatile, no less sharp. Hollywood tried to tame her, reshape her. She broke contracts, started wars, lost friends, but kept her spine. She didn't want to be loved, she wanted to be taken seriously, and she was. Davis wasn't just acting, she was wielding emotion like a weapon. Fact #9. Gregory Peck. The conscience of the silver screen. He didn't roar, he reasoned. In an era of brash masculinity, Gregory Peck stood as a monument of calm integrity. His portrayal of Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird didn't just earn awards, it became a moral blueprint. Peck wasn't flashy, he wasn't scandalous, but he radiated gravity, the kind that made you believe the world could be better, simply because someone like him existed. Even when playing flawed men, there was always a sense of inner compass. As time passed and stars dimmed, Peck's light didn't fade, it matured. Generations of audiences and politicians, teachers, fathers looked to him not as a performer, but as a parable. In a world chasing noise, Peck offered quiet conviction, and somehow that still echoes louder. Fact #0. Ingrid Bergman, the beauty that refused to obey. Her face was a contradiction, soft, open, honest yet defiant. Ingrid Bergman didn't wear glamour like a costume. She wore it like skin, natural, effortless, never artificial. Hollywood adored her in Casablanca, Gaslight, and Spellbound. But when she followed her heart, leaving her husband for director Roberto Rossellini, America turned on her. She was denounced in Congress, branded immoral, exiled from the very industry she helped elevate. But Bergman didn't vanish. She doubled down on authenticity, embracing European cinema, embracing herself. And in time, the world came back to her, not because she apologized, but because she never did. Ingrid didn't age into irrelevance. She evolved into truth. Fact #9. Katharine Hepburn. The woman who wore pants before it was allowed. She was never interested in being ladylike. She was interested in being free. Katharine Hepburn challenged every rule of femininity in her era, and did it with trousers, tenacity, and towering intelligence. Studios tried to soften her, audiences tried to reject her, but Hepburn kept coming sharp, witty, gloriously unbending. Whether in The Philadelphia Story, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, or The African Queen, she was never a damsel. She was the force driving the story forward. She won 4 Oscars. But her real legacy isn't gold statues, it's the freedom she carved for every woman who came after her. Not by begging for space, but by taking it. She didn't just break the mold, she made sure no one could ever pour women into it again. Fact Hasson 2. Elizabeth Taylor, the stardust that never settled. She was a child star, a beauty queen, a scandal magnet, a businesswoman, an activist, but above all, Elizabeth Taylor was a cosmic event. Too much for one screen, too radiant for just one label. Her violet eyes became legend. Her marriages became headlines. Her diamonds became metaphors. But what endured wasn't the gossip, it was the gravity. The sense that when Liz Taylor entered a room, the universe adjusted. She lived loudly, loved fiercely, fought bravely, including her early activism against AIDS, long before it was fashionable. Taylor didn't chase relevance. She dragged it toward her. Time didn't dim her. It simply failed to outshine her. Fact Hasson 3. Clark Gable, the king who smiled through the wreckage. They called him the King of Hollywood. But Clark Gable never acted like royalty. He wore masculinity like an old leather jacket, rugged, worn, undeniably American. In Gone with the Wind, he didn't just steal scenes, he burned them into memory. But behind the smirk was sorrow. He lost the love of his life, Carol Lombard, in a plane crash. He went to war, not for publicity, but for penance. Gable carried loss like a second skin, and yet, he kept showing up, mustache in place, eyes heavy but sharp. He was the man men wanted to be, and women wanted to figure out. Not because he was perfect, but because he knew he wasn't. Gable ruled a kingdom of illusion, but his pain was always real. Fact Hasson 4. John Wayne, the myth America still believes in. He didn't invent the cowboy, but he defined it. John Wayne was more than a movie star. He was an ideology. Stoic, straight-backed, unflinching. His walk wasn't just iconic, it was symbolic. In film after film, he stood for what America wanted to believe about itself. Courage, clarity, conviction. But beneath the surface was complexity. His politics divided, his persona overwhelmed. And yet, even his critics couldn't look away. He became folklore, a silhouette against the setting Sunday. And whether you worship him or question him, one thing remains clear. John Wayne is still riding across the collective imagination. Was he a man or a metaphor? Maybe both. And that's why he endures. Fact Hasson 5. Sean Connery, the man who made danger look effortless. He ordered his martinis shaken, not stirred, and the world never stirred the same again. Sean Connery didn't just play James Bond, he defined him. Suave, lethal, magnetic with a whisper of cruelty. But Connery was never just 007. In The Untouchables, The Name of the Rose, and Indiana Jones, he brought gravity to every role. He aged without apology, wore silver hair like armor, and never begged to stay relevant. He simply was. He rejected the Hollywood machine when it tried to control him, turned down roles, disappeared, returned on his terms. That defiance became part of his legend. Other Bonds came and went, but Connery never left. Fact Hasson 6. Judy Garland, the voice that carried broken dreams. She was just a girl in a gingham dress when the world first fell in love with her. Judy Garland wasn't built for stardom, she was sacrificed to it. MGM sculpted her, medicated her, sold her, but they could never silence her. Her voice trembled with both power and pleading. Over the Rainbow wasn't a song, it was a cry. Every note Garland sang carried the ache of someone trying to find home, not a place, but a peace that always seemed just out of reach. She stumbled, she shattered, but she never disappeared. Her legend grew not from perfection, but from perseverance. Today, that voice still haunts stages, drag shows, film schools, because pain, when sung truthfully, never dies. Judy Garland didn't chase rainbows. She was the storm that made them. Fact Hasson 7. Paul Newman, the kindness hidden behind blue eyes. Those eyes. Icy blue, razor sharp, unreadable. On screen, Paul Newman could radiate mischief or melancholy in a single glance. In Cool Hand Luke, the hustler, Butch Cassidy, he was charm personified, but never hollow. Off-screen, he was even more radical. He built charities, raced cars, gave away fortunes, not for PR, but for principle. His food brand donated hundreds of millions. His marriage to Joanne Woodward stood as a rare Hollywood promise kept. Newman redefined masculinity, not through aggression, but through depth. He proved that cool could coexist with compassion. In an industry full of mirrors, Paul Newman left behind windows. Fact Hasson 8. Rita Hayworth, the goddess who was always acting. Men dreamed of her, posters worshipped her. In Gilda, she tossed her hair, and time stood still. Rita Hayworth was the pinup to end all pinups, the ultimate femme fatale, but it was all an illusion. Born Margarita Cancino, she was rebranded by studios, hairline altered, name changed, accent erased. Hollywood sold a fantasy, but at the cost of her identity. Rita played the part so well that the world forgot there was a real woman underneath. Later in life, Alzheimer's stole her memories, but somehow ours never faded. Because what Hayworth projected wasn't just seduction, it was a kind of sorrow we all recognized, even if we didn't understand it. They said men went to bed with Gilda and woke up with Rita, but no one ever saw the woman behind them both. Fact Hassananane, Steve McQueen, the cool that never needed permission. He didn't talk much. He didn't have to. Steve McQueen was a man of few words and endless presence. In Bullet, The Great Escape, and The Thomas Crown Affair, he didn't act like he was cool, he simply was. He raced cars, rode motorcycles, dodged the studio system, and treated scripts like suggestions. His style, denim jackets, defiance, understatement, became a blueprint for an entire generation. McQueen wasn't polished, he was raw, and that made him unforgettable. Even in death, his aura lingers in fashion spreads, in action heroes, in every actor who tries to play quiet danger. But no one's matched his silence, because silence, in his case, wasn't emptiness. It was control. Steve McQueen didn't ask for attention. He made the world lean in. Fact #20. Cary Grant. The charm that refused to go. Out of style. Some men age. Cary Grant refined. He glided through decades with tuxedoed wit, playing suave scoundrels, accidental heroes, and romantic enigmas, always with that sly smile that said, "I know what you're thinking." But Grant wasn't a product of ego. He was a man built from reinvention. Born Archibald Leach, raised in poverty, shaped by vaudeville, he engineered Cary Grant like a performance art project. But behind the charm was complexity, anxiety, even LSD therapy in his later years. He never won a competitive Oscar. He didn't need to. Because what he left behind wasn't just performances, it was an ideal. An aspirational masculinity that was sophisticated without being smug. Cary Grant didn't go out of fashion. Fashion still hasn't caught up to him. Bonus fact, they never left. How these stars became archetypes. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, these stars kept appearing not in sequels, but in symbols. Monroe in perfume ads, Dean on Teenage Rebellion posters, Hepburn in every minimalist fashion line, Chaplin in protest signs, Connery in every spy trope, McQueen in every brooding antihero. They aren't just remembered, they're replicated. Because each of them didn't just act, they defined a human idea. They became archetypes: elegance, defiance, longing, stoicism, playfulness, nobility. And society keeps reusing those templates, like myths retold in modern clothes. This isn't nostalgia, it's architecture. These stars weren't built to last, but somehow they outlasted even their own intentions. Maybe time didn't fail to kill them. Maybe they simply became part of it. Time doesn't always bury. Sometimes it preserves like amber holding onto fire. These 20 stars may have vanished from red carpets and studio lots, but their essence lingers in the way we dress, the way we dream, the way we define what it means to matter. They weren't just actors, they were blueprints. But what makes a star truly eternal? Is it the roles they played, the lives they lived, or the parts of ourselves we saw reflected in them? Tell us, which of these legends still lives inside you? Or is there someone missing, someone you believe time could never kill? Let the comments be your stage.